under the bright lights of Cleveland's rookie minicamp. Shedeur Sanders stood poised in front of a semicircle of reporters, helmet tucked under one arm, sweat still glistening from drills. He had just wrapped another near-perfect practice. His spiral was clean, reads sharp, energy magnetic. Everything about his demeanor said professional. And yet, as the cameras rolled and microphones pointed in his direction, what came next was not a question about his timing routes or his deep ball precision. It was something else entirely, something that one said couldn't be unsaid. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. In Cleveland, reporter Mary Kay Cabot leaned forward and asked, "Has your father's declining health affected your focus or mindset going into your rookie year?" The air seemed to thicken. There was an audible shift in the tone of the room. Coaches, teammates, even other reporters froze in disbelief. The question hung in the air like smoke, disrespectful, racially charged, and entirely out of bounds. For a rookie trying to prove himself, this could have been a career-altering moment. A slip in composure, a flash of temper, even a frustrated glare could have fed the media machine that often spins black athletes into caricatures. But Sanders didn't blink. He simply stared back, then calmly said, "I'm here to talk about football. That's what matters. That's why I'm here." And just like that, Shedeur neutralized a trap decades in the making. The moment spread like wildfire. Social media lit up. Fans erupted. Former NFL players chimed in. From Hall of Famers to high school coaches, voices rang out condemning the question and praising Sanders. "We've seen this tactic before," tweeted a former Pro Bowl receiver. "They do this to our young brothers to rattle them." Shedeur passed the test like a vet. But why did this one question strike such a nerve? Because it wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was a window into a deeper, persistent bias that has followed confident, talented black quarterbacks for generations. It was reminiscent of the loaded questions Cam Newton fielded when he was labeled a distraction for dancing. It echoed the concerns about focus that trailed Lamar Jackson despite his MVP run. It stirred memories of the insinuations that Colin Kaepernick's convictions somehow made him unfit to lead. Sanders' refusal to entertain that narrative felt like a cultural reset. He didn't apologize for his confidence. He didn't shrink to fit someone else's expectations. He simply responded with clarity and direction. In doing so, he reminded everyone that his identity, both as a quarterback and as a man, would not be shaped by old tropes or outdated media tactics. The NFL is often praised as a meritocracy, where the best rise to the top regardless of background. But what often goes unsaid is how that climb differs depending on your skin tone and demeanor. For many black quarterbacks, greatness is enough. They must also navigate a gauntlet of coded language, unearned skepticism, and constant scrutiny over style, personality, and tone. Shedeur Sanders knows this terrain well. How could he not? He's the son of Deion "Primetime" Sanders, a man who redefined swagger in the NFL, yet was endlessly criticized for it. Shedeur grew up watching how the world responds to confident black men, and he's used that awareness to build a brand rooted in authenticity but armored in discipline. The timing of this media clash only adds to the controversy. Just weeks before, reports surfaced of a $100 million lawsuit alleging a campaign of racial bias designed to tank Shedeur's draft stock. The evidence? Leaked scouting memos questioning his attitude, coachability, and locker room fit. Dog whistles all too familiar in the league. Despite leading the NCAA in multiple passing categories and boasting one of the highest football IQs of his class, Sanders inexplicably fell to the 5th round, passed over by teams that instead selected punters and long snappers. So when Mary Kay's question came, it wasn't just an out-of-line inquiry. It was a continuation of a narrative, one that tried to chip away at the legitimacy of a young man who had earned every ounce of his spotlight. It was as if the league, still uncomfortable with the idea of a confident black quarterback who didn't ask for permission, was trying to remind him of his place. But Shedeur isn't interested in playing small. And the fans? They're not interested in watching the old script play out again. Within hours, hashtags like #StandWithShedeur and #LetQB1Play trended nationally. Fans flooded Brown's message boards demanding that the team protect their rookie from hostile media. College teammates shared stories of Sanders' leadership, his late-night film sessions, his quiet mentorship of younger players. The idea that he was anything other than focused, disciplined, and ready seemed laughable to those who actually knew him. And through it all, Sanders kept working. The next day, while reporters gathered outside the facility hoping for a soundbite, Shedeur was already in the weight room. That afternoon, he delivered another stellar practice, dropping 60-yard bombs, calling protections like a seasoned vet, commanding the huddle with a presence far beyond his rookie status. Inside the locker room, the response to the controversy was equally telling. Several veterans reportedly approached Sanders privately, offering support. A few even confronted media staff about the types of questions being allowed. "He's got the whole squad watching," said one defensive starter, "and he's making us believe. It's not just about politics or race. It's about a franchise that's seen too many false starts at quarterback. It's about a fan base hungry for something real. Someone they can trust, someone who reflects their values, someone who doesn't fold under pressure." Shedeur Sanders might be a rookie, but in every measurable way that matters, performance, poise, leadership, he's already moving like a franchise cornerstone. This incident, while painful and frustrating, may prove to be a galvanizing moment. For Sanders, it's another test passed. For the Browns, it's a reminder of what they have. For the NFL, it's a challenge to rise above the lazy narratives and start judging players by what they actually bring to field. There's a lesson here for young athletes watching, especially those coming from underrepresented communities. You don't have to play to the crowd. You don't have to conform to outdated expectations. You can stand firm, play your game, and let your work speak. Because that's exactly what Shedeur is doing. The days of quarterbacks being forced to be quiet, humble, and invisible until the media says they're ready are coming to an end. The new generation isn't waiting for a seat at the table. They're building their own. And Sanders? He's leading the way. This isn't the end of the story. More tests will come, more cameras will roll, and no doubt, more people will try to bait him into missteps. But if this week has shown us anything, it's that Shedeur Sanders is more than ready. Ready for the spotlight, ready for the pressure, ready to change the game, not just on Sundays, but every single day he walks into that building. He's not just playing quarterback. He's redefining what it means to be one. And yet, for all the grace and maturity Shedeur Sanders has shown, what unfolded during rookie minicamp has become more than just a media flashpoint. It's ignited a conversation across NFL circles about power, perception, and progress. His poise under fire may have earned him widespread praise, but it's also forced teams, journalists, and fans alike to re-examine the institutional reflexes baked into how they cover, critique, and evaluate black quarterbacks. The reaction in locker rooms around the league was telling. Several former players, now analysts, spoke on sports talk shows and podcasts, echoing a familiar refrain. "We've seen this before." Many remembered how Donovan McNabb, despite years of elite play, was dissected endlessly for his demeanor, or how Russell Wilson, early in his career, was subtly pressured to speak, act, and lead in ways that made certain power structures more comfortable. Even Patrick Mahomes, now the league's face, has spoken about feeling the need to not mess up off the field just to avoid scrutiny that others might never face. Shedeur isn't the first to walk this path, but the clarity and calm with which he navigated his early brush with it, that might be new. Because here's the part that isn't discussed enough. What Sanders demonstrated was not just professionalism. It was strategy. He understands the moment he's in. He knows every word he says will be dissected, every gesture analyzed, every eyebrow raised turned into a controversy. And so he's chosen his weapons carefully: discipline, focus, and preparation. Those tools are beginning to redefine the role of a rookie quarterback. Traditionally, rookies, especially ones taken in later rounds, are expected to be quiet, deferential, and largely invisible unless called upon. Their job is to learn, to wait, to absorb, to stay out of the way. Shedeur has no interest in playing that role. He walks into every meeting room as if he belongs there, not because he's arrogant, but because he's done the work. He studies relentlessly, often arriving before coaches. He knows not just the offensive playbook, but how the defensive schemes evolve week to week. He asks questions that veterans raise their eyebrows at, not because they're dumb, but because they're precise, insightful, tactical, and that preparation has changed the way people view him. He's not just a media story or the son of a Hall of Famer. He's become, in a short time, a quarterback that coaches are willing to adjust for. Receivers trust him. Linemen respond to him. Even defensive players, usually the most skeptical group when it comes to rookies, have acknowledged his presence. The deeper effect, though, is cultural, because Sanders has arrived at a time when the NFL is undergoing a massive shift, not just in how it plays the game, but in how it talks about it. Younger fans are more vocal. Social media creates instant accountability. Outdated narratives don't just disappear quietly. They're dragged into the spotlight and held up for critique. And what we saw with Mary Kay Cabot's question wasn't just tone deaf. It was emblematic of a deeper system that has long used media as a tool to control and contain athletes who don't fit the mold. Shedeur broke that mold before he ever put on an NFL jersey. And now, those who were comfortable with the old rules are uncomfortable with the new ones. But discomfort, as any athlete knows, is a prerequisite for growth. The NFL is being forced to grow because players like Sanders are forcing it to. What's more, Sanders' teammates, especially fellow rookies, are watching closely. They see that you don't have to play it small to succeed, that you can carry yourself with pride, speak with intelligence, and demand respect without being labeled a problem, that you can show emotion, have a brand, and still be a student of the game. This is about more than just quarterbacking. It's about agency. And the NFL has never been entirely comfortable with players, particularly black players, exerting that kind of agency early in their careers. Consider how rare it is for a rookie to control a press conference, to walk away from a media moment more powerful than when they entered it. Yet, that's what Sanders did. He stripped the power from a question designed to diminish him and turned it into a statement of his own values. That, in itself, is revolutionary. And the ripple effects are just beginning. Back in Cleveland, team executives now find themselves at the center of an evolving narrative. They didn't just draft a quarterback. They drafted a figurehead. Someone who doesn't just represent a position, but a movement, a new kind of leadership. And while that can be terrifying for traditionalists, it's a gift if used properly. If the Browns are wise, they'll embrace what they have. They'll build around it, not just on the field, but in the building. They'll make sure Sanders has the mentorship he needs, the infrastructure to grow, and most importantly, the freedom to be himself. Because here's the truth that many teams are now reckoning with. Authenticity is a superpower. Shedeur Sanders doesn't try to sound like a prototypical QB. He doesn't rehearse cliches or present a sanitized version of himself for media comfort. He's sharp, direct, self-aware, and fans are responding. His jersey sales are climbing again. Highlight reels from training camp are being watched on repeat. And the mood in Cleveland, a city so often on the edge of football despair, feels different. It feels like something is building. Of course, challenges remain. Media scrutiny won't stop. Neither will the subtle pushback from those who feel threatened by his confidence. There will be more questions designed to rattle him. More editorials trying to frame him as too much, too soon. But if the first chapter is any indication, Sanders is ready. And he's not alone. He represents a generation of athletes who have studied not just game tape, but media tape, who understand that being great isn't just about X's and O's, but about controlling the story, who realize that silence can be a trap and that speaking wisely, when done right, is power. That generation is arriving now. Sanders is just its clearest voice. For now, he returns to work, practice, film study, reps with receivers, meetings with coaches. He's not thinking about sound bites. He's thinking about week one, about timing routes, about progressions and blitz pickups. He's building a foundation brick by brick, even as the world watches. And that's what makes this story so compelling. Because beneath the spotlight, beyond the headlines, there's still just a young quarterback trying to master his craft. Still a player who knows that for all the noise, the only thing that truly silences doubt is performance. Still a rookie, yes, but one writing his own story with a pen dipped in steel and vision. In the coming weeks, more tests will come, more scrutiny, more opportunities to be misunderstood. But there's a quiet certainty in how Sanders walks, talks, and plays. It's the certainty of someone who knows who he is and refuses to let anyone else define it for him. The NFL may have underestimated Shedeur Sanders, but they won't for long. And the next generation of quarterbacks, watching from college dorms, high school fields, and youth leagues across the country, now has a blueprint, not just for how to throw, but for how to stand, tall, unshaken, unapologetically themselves. In the aftermath of that uncomfortable media exchange, something else began to shift, not just in Cleveland, but across the wider ecosystem of football commentary. Players, coaches, even a few former general managers stepped forward with a rare kind of honesty. They admitted that there was a deeper issue lurking beneath the surface of sports coverage, something unspoken but persistent. It was a reality that confident, outspoken black quarterbacks have often had to navigate a double standard. Be good, but don't be loud. Lead, but don't challenge the room. Be yourself, but not too much. Shedeur Sanders had made it clear he was unwilling to play by those unwritten rules, and that clarity forced others to confront their discomfort. For the first time in a long time, the fan base wasn't divided along generational lines. Younger fans, veterans of social media, and quick to call out double standards, were united with longtime supporters of the Browns in saying, that question crossed a line, not because they all loved Shedeur, but because they understood that some things simply aren't acceptable anymore, not in 2025, and especially not in the NFL, a league that claims to be evolving. Yet in the eye of that media storm, Sanders remained unshaken. He returned to practice the next day like nothing happened. Focused, sharp, calm, he greeted the media cordially, stood by his locker with the same composure, and redirected all questions back to football, not to avoid the issue, but because he knew the most powerful message he could send wasn't with words. It was with execution. And execute he did. In the next practice session open to reporters, Shedeur went 18 for 20 in red zone drills. He led a 2-minute offense that carved through the defense like it was clockwork. Coaches huddled in private meetings that night, whispering what had been building for weeks. He's ready now. But readiness wasn't just about completion percentages and arm talent. It was about command. Sanders didn't just call plays. He corrected alignments. He adjusted protections pre-snap. He communicated with a presence that made even the veterans listen. And when a second-year wide receiver dropped a key pass on a crossing route, it was Shedeur who jogged up, patted him on the helmet, and said, "We'll get it next time." No frustration, no blaming, just leadership. That moment, quiet and off-camera, resonated just as much as any highlight reel, because it signaled something that coaches care about deeply: trust. The locker room began to shift. Not overnight, but measurably. Older players who had been skeptical started watching him more closely in meetings. They saw how hard he studied, how he stayed after the work with receivers, how he never complained, even when taking third-string reps early in camp. In one team meeting, when a coach asked if anyone wanted to lead the post-practice huddle, several eyes turned toward Sanders. He didn't volunteer immediately. He waited, respectful. But when no one else stepped forward, he took a breath and walked to the middle. What he said wasn't dramatic. No rallying cry. Just a reminder. We've all got something to prove, but we can't do it alone. That's when a shift happened. The veterans didn't roll their eyes. They nodded. Respect in the NFL is rarely given. It's earned in quiet moments, in hard reps, in how you carry yourself when the cameras aren't rolling. Shedeur Sanders had started earning it, not just because of who his father was, but because of who he was becoming. Back in the media world, the narrative began to wobble. Some of the same analysts who had questioned his draft stock weeks earlier now found themselves reevaluating. Maybe we got this one wrong. One pundit admitted on a national broadcast. Maybe the league missed on this kid, not because of what he lacked, but because of what they couldn't see. That kind of admission is rare in professional sports, but it was a sign of the undeniable. Shedeur wasn't just living up to the hype. He was creating a new kind of quarterback story, one not bound by traditional pedigree or media conformity, one rooted in talent, yes, but also in authenticity. It didn't hurt that Shedeur Sanders, ever the watchful father, remained largely quiet through all of this. He offered no public defense, no long tweets, because he didn't need to. Shedeur was writing his own defense, on the field, in film study, and with every controlled response to an inflammatory moment. Privately, insiders within the Browns organization began discussing a new possibility. What if Shedeur didn't just make the 53-man roster? What if he started week 1? It wasn't in the original plan. The Browns had a veteran starter, a serviceable backup, a strategy in place. But the plan was starting to look flimsy in the face of results. Sanders was making plays that couldn't be ignored. He was doing it with precision, with maturity, with an understanding of tempo and spacing that often takes young quarterbacks years to grasp. And he was doing it while bearing the weight of media scrutiny that would have unraveled lesser rookies. The coaching staff now face a dilemma. Do they reward merit, or do they stick with the roadmap? One assistant coach, speaking anonymously to a local podcast, put it plainly: we preach competition. We preach that the best guy plays. If we don't stand by that now, what are we even doing? In the days ahead, the preseason games will begin. The pad will come on. The hits will get real. And Sanders will face the greatest test of all: real NFL speed, real pressure, and real consequences. But the past few weeks are any indication. He's not just ready, he's hungry. And that hunger? It's contagious. What began as a media controversy has now become a movement, not orchestrated, not manufactured, just real respect, real leadership, real quarterbacking, and maybe, just maybe, the start of a new era in Cleveland.